a hospital that's saving burn victims here.
In an instant, your clothes can catch on fire.
And halfway around the world.
To empower the locals is the way to go.
Plus,
Glen Campbell,
the legendary Rhinestone Cowboy, blazing a different trail.
Your difficulties are due to Alzheimer's disease.
Glen Campbell's goodbye on today's 700 Club.
Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Well, the guys get together in Washington. Senator McConnell was asked by the press, what if the president begins to issue a flurry of executive orders without Congress? And the senator said it would be like waving a red flag in front of a bull. So I hope those bulls don't charge at each other, and really they're trying to get together, and I think the American people would like to see them do that. Terry?
Well, the message they sent, I think, this week was that they want things done differently in Washington, and so we hope that message is here. Here's Jennifer Wishon with that story.
One day after his Democrat allies fell out of power on Capitol Hill, President Obama responded with some faint praise.
Obviously, Republicans had a good night, and they deserve credit for running good campaigns.
But if you're expecting the commander-in-chief to announce a major change of course, prepare to be disappointed.
It doesn't make me mopey. It energizes me.
Mr. Obama was resolute, defiant even, as he defended his record and administration, despite low approval ratings. He says he'll look for opportunities to work with Republicans, but when pressed, showed few signs of changing his arm's-length approach to the GOP.
What I am going to try to do as president is to make sure that I'm advancing what I think is best for the country.
He also doubled down on his plans to craft an executive order on immigration, a move sure to sour any bipartisan goodwill.
It's like waving a red flag in front of a bull to say, if you guys don't do what I want, I'm going to do it on my own. And the president's done that on Obamacare. He's done it on immigration and threatening to do it again.
Future Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he wants to make the Senate productive again and says his fellow Republicans want to address immigration reform through legislation. If they do, President Obama says he'll withdraw his executive action.
If, in fact, there is a great eagerness on the part of Republicans to tackle a broken immigration system, then they have every opportunity to do it.
As the dust settles, we're learning that values voters, including evangelicals, help propel Republicans to control the Senate. A public opinion strategies poll shows 1 out of every 3 voters was a conservative Christian.
It's larger than the African American vote, the Hispanic vote, the union vote, and the gay vote combined. So I think the message is there's no Republican wave in 2014. And there is no conceivable Republican majority in the United States without this constituency as the cornerstone of that majority.
Republicans may not stay on top long if they don't find a remedy for the main issue that sent voters to the polls: lingering economic pain.
Americans plagued by the economic recession sent the president to the White House in 2008. 6 years later, exit polls show many of those same Americans feel left behind economically. And those voters supported Republicans 2-1.
Let me make it clear there will be no government shutdowns and no default on the national debt.
But as long as President Obama occupies the White House, there will be an ongoing showdown over Obamacare, with McConnell promising to try to get rid of key parts of the unpopular law.
I think we will be addressing that issue in a variety of different ways.
And the president saying he'll be on the other side of that fight.
There are certainly some lines I'm going to draw. Repeal of the law, I won't sign.
So while there's talk now of bipartisanship, there are also signs the deep divides between the two sides isn't likely to go away in the last 2 years of the Obama presidency. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, the White House.
Thanks, Jennifer. I think everybody has to keep in mind that the reason that there was a major shift in the election is that the people didn't want the Democrats, they wanted the Republicans. They didn't, that's why the Senate went from the Democrats to the Republicans. And that's why I understand that there are now more Republican legislators in the states than there have been at any time since the 1920s. And the Republicans picked up a couple of key gubernatorial races and held on to some others in some so-called blue states. It was just remarkable what they did. And for some reason, the president doesn't seem aware of it. He said, well, yeah, 1/3 of the people went to the polls and voted, but I represent the other 2/3. He does no such thing. They just didn't like him, and he won't admit it. That's, what do they call it, cognitive dissonance? There are all kinds of names they give that, but he doesn't want to admit what's there. But I think the Republicans are taking a very cautious attitude, which I think is wise. It's going to be incremental, so you don't like all of Obamacare, so you start taking the parts of it that are obnoxious and getting bills that go through the Congress with bipartisan support, and then defy the president to veto them. If he begins to veto, he's going to go down in flames. So they've got the whip handle, if I can use that term, and they're going to use it very judiciously, but I think they're going to be able to do it. And what they don't need is just a whole lot of inflammatory rhetoric. The American people want to get this country back on track, and they want to get people working. People are out of work, and it hurts when they haven't got jobs or they're underperforming what their education calls for. And they're asking for change. And the change would be you take away some of these regulatory burdens and you start lifting some of these tax burdens. And that's what the governors have done in state after state, especially in the Midwest. And you look at a guy like John Kasich in Ohio, he just swamped the opposition because the blue-collar people identify with a guy like John Kasich. He speaks their language, but it's a compassionate conservative, and it's working very, very well. Well, in other news, Russia is putting on another demonstration. Putin, as I've said before, is slightly nuts, and he's got a huge armament at his disposal. And John Jessup has this story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. Here's John.
Pat, Russia has been test firing intercontinental ballistic missiles from a submarine. According to some media reports, it launched 2 of the missiles within a week, and one of them has a range of more than 7,400 miles. Vladimir Putin has been working to substantially upgrade the Russian Navy. Meanwhile, the president of Poland has signed into law a new national defense strategy. It's aimed at addressing the threats from the fighting in Ukraine and what it calls Russia's intensifying policy of confrontation. Police in Pakistan have arrested up to 45 Muslims in connection with the killing of a Christian couple for allegedly desecrating the Quran. Police say hundreds of Muslims took part in the attack earlier this week. The mob killed the couple and burned their bodies in a brick kiln where the husband and his wife had worked. Under the country's harsh blasphemy laws, anyone convicted of insulting Islam or the Prophet Muhammad can be sentenced to death, but the laws are often misused to settle vendettas and target minorities like Christians. Well, for several weeks now, violent riots and terror attacks have rocked eastern Jerusalem as Palestinians accuse Israel of endangering the Al-Aqsa Mosque. But what's really behind the attacks? Chris Mitchell files this report from Jerusalem.
It happened again on Wednesday. A Palestinian terrorist used a vehicle as a weapon to plow into Israelis, killing 1 and wounding 13 others. The attack took place at this intersection not too far from Jerusalem's Old City. It's the second attack of this kind in just the past 2 weeks, and many are wondering if this is the new weapon of choice for Palestinian terrorists. Later, another terrorist rammed into 3 soldiers at a bus stop outside Jerusalem. Earlier in the day, Palestinians rioted on the Temple Mount. Police spokesman Mickey Rosenfeld said they're separate issues.
There are tensions in Jerusalem, but our aim is to do everything possible to both deal with these types of incidents and, of course, stay one step ahead and prevent those incidents from taking place.
But Hamas itself made the connection. Shortly after the first attack, the terror group said it was intended to defend Al-Aqsa, the mosque on the Temple Mount. There are a growing number of Jews that want to pray on the Mount, where only Muslims are allowed to pray. The Israeli government says it won't allow that to happen. But Israel says Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is inciting violence by telling Palestinians that the Al-Aqsa Mosque is in danger.
We've seen that on a ground level. We felt that. The Israeli police have had to deal with Palestinian suspects throwing stones at police officers.
The Israeli Foreign Ministry posted this video, it says, shows Palestinian youth preparing and fighting Israeli police on the Temple Mount. Palestinian affairs expert Pinkas Inbari says the trouble is part of a bigger plot.
No, it is not spontaneous. It is coming from, basically it is from Muslim Brotherhood, and behind Muslim Brotherhood is the Qatar.
Hamas is the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, which has the Nusra group in Syria and Beit al-Maqdis in the Egyptian Sinai.
All of them together, and they want to make Jerusalem the main subject, top of the agenda, in order to regain the Arab masses again.
Inbari says Abbas stopped short of directly paying Palestinians to commit terror, but Hamas is filling in the gap. However, he says the call to violence is not resonating with most Palestinians.
It is far, far below the expectation of Muslim Brotherhood. Jerusalem, by far, generally speaking, is not dragged into the conflict.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
This weekend marks 1 year since the powerful super typhoon Haiyan struck the Philippines, killing thousands of people. George Thomas visited the scene right after the storm, and he's now returned for a look at the rebuilding efforts 12 months later.
Yeah.
Is this where you were born?
Yeah.
Charlie Cedeno was born in Tacloban City. The neighborhood he grew up in sits just a few hundred feet from the Philippine coast. Today, the unimaginable task of rebuilding a mess that looks like this. I was here days after Typhoon Haiyan slammed into Cedeno's coastal neighborhood. This footage shot on a small drone shows the devastation. 8,000 people died on November 8, 2013. Tacloban was hardest hit, with 30,000 homes destroyed. Today there are many people who are still living in tents.
Marami pa.
Yes, that's right. And many haven't left because they don't have a house to live in.
Michael Saoy is among the 15,000 still living in tents or makeshift homes. In a year, the government here has managed to build only 50 new homes.
It's still very hard and little has changed. I'm looking for ways I can overcome my situation, but the government is moving too slow.
Show us where your room is. Show us where... Cedeno is one of the fortunate to have a new home. CBN Disaster Relief built him and 1,500 other families transitional homes. And when the typhoon destroyed the company where he worked, CBN Disaster Relief hired him.
I'm so happy because they gave us a house and they gave me a job. I'm proud to be part of an organization that really helps people.
There were about 16,000 businesses operating here in Tacloban prior to Typhoon Haiyan. Today, about 7,000 are back in business. One of them is Calizi Cafe, owned and operated by Jerry Ruiz. So, Jerry, what are we eating today?
We're having the classic, the best sellers of Cali.
The restaurant suffered a lot of damage, but 2 weeks after the typhoon hit, he decided to open for business to send a message to his city.
We were trying to set an example. It was trying to get the morale of everybody to get things back to normal.
This Saturday, marking the one-year anniversary, Michael Dikatimbag will join his countrymen in remembering that fateful day. He lost his mother in the typhoon, and today, she, along with 3,000 others, are buried in this mass grave.
It's very painful to know that she's here, but I cannot grieve forever. I have to try to move on in the midst of this storm.
City officials are putting the final names of the deceased on crosses before Saturday.
The difficult part is that you are burying people, and this weighs on our hearts. But it's our duty to create a sacred place that people can come and remember.
George Thomas, CBN News, Tacloban, Philippines.
Heartbreaking losses, but as he said in that report, we must go on. And Pat, CBN and Operation Blessing are helping them do just that.
Well, that's what's so wonderful. We were able to reach out, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so excited. 1,500 dwellings for those people. I mean, that's what CBN, disaster relief. We have two arms. CBN itself has relief, Orphan's Promise has relief, and Operation Blessing. And so all around the world, we're helping the poor and the needy. And they're in desperate condition. We get there fast. You know, in the time of maximum emergency, when they need food, they need water, they need shelter, they need medicine, and we get there quickly. We don't have a lot of bureaucracy that holds us down. We can move fast, and we do, and the people appreciate it. And if you want to participate in helping the poor and the needy around the world, it's CBN Disaster Relief Fund. It's CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia. And as Thanksgiving comes up and Christmas comes up, this would be a wonderful way of showing that you're thankful and grateful to the Lord that you want to help somebody else. And I've always felt that's an important part of our worship to God. You say, God, you've blessed us with bounty and abundance and a warm house and clothes and all the things that go along with a prosperous society. And we can reach out with a little bit of what's turned over to us and give it to those less fortunate. So there's the telephone number, 1-800-759-0700, or you can log on to CBN Disaster Relief, CBN Center, Virginia Beach, and we'd be very grateful to receive and immediately disperse those.
What a wonderful picture of hope in the midst of devastation that's still really mind-boggling.
You know, George, God bless him. You know, he's Indian by background, but because of his demeanor, he can get along with everybody. I mean, he functions in the Muslim world, in the Arab world, in the remote areas of Tibet and Mongolia, and here he is in the Philippines and everywhere. He's a brilliant reporter, and he's one of the best on television, if not the best in this kind of story. Terry?
Well, up next, help for victims of one of the worst injuries, burns.
It's just like your entire skin peeling off. All the raw nerves are now exposed. And even just wind blowing across your skin, it is incredibly painful.
See how one hospital in America's burn belt is working to save lives here and abroad. And then later on, Glen Campbell's wife talks about her husband's musical legacy, his ongoing struggle with Alzheimer's disease, and his new film called I'll Be Me.
You wouldn't think this would be a sad time, but actually the holidays are kind of a bad time because we've got all kinds of candles burning and flammable material in our houses, and it produces fires, and fires bring forth one of the most hideous types of injuries, serious burns. They can cause skin to peel off, raw nerves are exposed, and the pain of burns are agonizing, or is agonizing. Our Laurie Johnson shows us how doctors at the University of North Carolina are saving the lives of burn victims in America and, at the same time, on the other side of the world.
The UNC Burn Center is located in America's burn belt.
We have a lot of grease fires, house fires, occupational injury, scalds, bonfire type injuries. We just have more of all kinds of injuries that result in needing a burn center. And that's particularly down here in the Southeast.
Most burns are preventable, like the kind that come from getting too close to a space heater.
If you're not very mobile and you have a blanket, this can happen in an instant. Your clothes can catch on fire, and that can be very devastating.
Children are often burned when they grab handles that are sticking out over the edge of the range, so always turn those handles inward. And if grease catches on fire, don't throw it in the sink or outside. Instead, cover it and turn off the burner.
Overfilling a turkey fryer can cause burns, and never use gasoline as an accelerant.
A lot of our patients think that, well, if I don't have lighter fluid or any other appropriate way to start a fire, I'll throw gasoline on. It causes so many problems. You have an explosion, and then the patients will end up coming in with really a devastating burn.
Much of what goes on here is paid for with donations.
This is one of the busiest burn centers in America, and the people who support it wanted to take all this expertise and share it with people halfway around the world who desperately need it.
So they opened this burn center in Malawi, Africa, where far too many children die from burns. Dr. Anthony Charles, who works at the UNC Burn Center, started the Malawian clinic and explains why so many kids are in jeopardy.
They live in small, simple, just one room. And so all the cooking is all open fires. And so when you have open fires that is also on the floor, and people carry their babies on their backs, when they bend over, children might fall in. When children are playing, they might fall in. Sometimes at night, when you think everybody's gone to bed, a child might want to go to the bathroom and may accidentally fall into the fire pit.
70% of the patients here are children, almost all suffering from flame burns, the worst kind.
It's just like your entire skin peeling off. All the raw nerves are now exposed. And even just wind blowing across your skin, it is incredibly painful. This function of the skin, which is to keep fluids in, you lose that. And so you lose a lot of fluid. You get very dehydrated very quickly. And that's why patients die.
Although UNC runs this hospital, a big thrust is training Malawians to take the reins.
Us as Americans will never be able to fix all the problems everywhere in the world. We just cannot do that. But to empower the locals to fix their own problems is the way to go.
So whether in Malawi, Africa, or here in America, the UNC burn centers are saving lives and minimizing the pain and disfigurement of one of the worst kinds of injury. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Thanks, Lori. For more about the UNC Burn Center in Malawi, as well as ways to treat major burns, you can go to our website at CBN News. I am just very impressed with what UNC is doing. They've got a tremendous heart center now. They've got a burn center. It's becoming one of the medical high points in the whole United States.
Well, and what a wonderful thing that they're doing and sharing the information with people in other parts of the world that wouldn't be able to do that otherwise.
Okay, well, congratulations, Big Blue, whatever they are, Light Blue.
Right. Well, up next, the stars speak out about a country music icon.
Glen Campbell showed me what country music was.
He took country music to new heights and became a global superstar.
Glen Campbell joins us live with a sneak peek from her husband's new film after this.
Glen Campbell's probably one of the greatest guitarists. He's known as a singer, but he's an incredible musician. He's a living legend. He's also been a dear friend of ours since his first 700 Club appearance in 1984. Right now, let's take a look back at Glen's life, including the first time he publicly proclaimed that he had become a Christian. Here's that exclusive interview with our own Scott Ross.
Mrs. Campbell, how does it feel to be the mother of one of the finest recording stars in the country?
Well, we're really proud of him, everything.
The record he's got out, which I guess is one of the biggest records he's ever had, called Rhinestone Cowboy, somebody told me is on the way to selling 2 million copies of one record.
The Entertainer of the Year was Glen Campbell.
Growing up across the world, Glen Campbell showed me what country music was.
Glen Campbell has been making music history for decades, and he still is. He took country music to new heights and became a global superstar.
He was the first singer to win in both country and contemporary categories in the same year.
I'll Be Me. The newly released documentary gives us a backstage pass to Glen Campbell's incredible goodbye tour. The film captures poignant on- and off-stage moments of one of country music's most successful, talented, and beloved artists. Glen was an Arkansas farm boy, the 7th son of 12 children, and learned to play the guitar from his Uncle Boo. I interviewed Glen in 1984. He told me about his start as a session musician in LA for some of the biggest names in music.
From Frank Sinatra to Elvis to Merle Haggard to Freddie Hart, Nat King Cole. I got the whole Kingston Trio I worked with for a long time. The Beach Boys I worked with. I was on the road with them for a year playing bass and singing the high part. And it was like going to school musically, I think.
I talked to him after a concert somewhere, I think it may have been Texas. And I was the first person to talk to Glen about his conversion to Jesus Christ.
I really cannot say what it is that I have done, because I give the credit to God.
Ironically, Glen's musical background started in the church, where he literally cut his teeth listening to hymns and gospel music.
I remember the first song I ever learned singing. That was "Where Could I Go But to the Lord."
Is that right?
Yeah. The second one I remember was "Amazing Grace."
But Glen drifted away from those spiritual roots, and the press pounced on it, especially his marriage problems. After 3 bad marriages and a highly publicized affair with singer Tanya Tucker, Glen Campbell was ready for a big change in his life. While the fling with Tanya was cooling off, Glen met Kim Wallen, a born-again member of the Radio City Music Hall dance troupe. A year later, they were married, right from the first blind date. This relationship was destined to be different from all the rest. And he had never said anything about it publicly. And in that interview, he came out and said it. I said, where are you with God? You've had a rocky road in life, other than career. He had been, he'd been a drunk. He'd done drugs. He had lost marriages, the whole deal. But now he's very happy with his wife and his children and all that. And I said, what caused the change in your life? Sometimes it's possible to go through a religious experience without having a genuine experience with the Lord himself. What about that?
I've experienced that, what you just said. About going through something that you think is religious, you think is right on, and you think is good, and you're getting the feedback from the other side, only it's not of God. It's that, come on.
You can be religious and still have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been through that, but since we've been together, we've really tried to put God first in our life, and we grow every day together in the Lord, and we believe in the relationship that the Bible teaches about man and woman.
In what way?
The husband should love his wife like Jesus loved the church, and the wife should be submissive. And
I could not be that way before because I wasn't honest and I wasn't real in the relationship.
Glen, let me ask you, is there something recently that's made the place of God more prominent in your life? And he said, God. I said, God? What happened with you and God? And you start talking about Jesus.
Well, when I hit 40, I realized that when do you grow up? When do you become a man? When do you become responsible? And I realized that I had been bastardizing singing gift and the playing gift, abusing myself bodily, and not doing that which was good and right in the eyes of God. God forgives you for that. He says Jesus Christ died on the cross for that. You are forgiven for your sins. Repent, then do it knowingly, and boy, that is a great sin.
I was blind, but now I see.
It sounds like you may be coming to a place where you're discovering who Glen Campbell is really for the first time.
I'm a child Christian now. That's what it is. I'm discovering who I am. I'm discovering what has actually been given me. Because I ain't just, to be where I am now in this life. The credit is to God. I'm not that brilliant. I'm not that smart.
Glen appeared on the 700 Club many times over the years. Remember this spot?
America, discover the book. Open up a brand new world. So take a peek and let it speak. You'll see how life can be.
In 2011, doctors gave Glen and Kim a heartbreaking diagnosis.
That in all likelihood, your difficulties are due to Alzheimer's disease.
It has happened to a music superstar. 2012 will mark the end of Glen's storied performing career.
There's no cure for the rhinestone cowboy who's heading into the sunset.
I ain't done yet.
Yeah.
Tell him that.
They decided Glen would do one last multinational tour, performing with his children on stage.
Part of me was afraid that I thought people were going to the show because they were going to see a crash.
It's a rough disease. To be out there rolling the dice with it was pretty brave.
Who are these people?
Oh, yeah, there they are.
Just healthy all the way around, to keep a merry heart. I think you'll be healthy, and not just to fight Alzheimer's, but to fight anything you're up against if you can keep a good sense of humor.
Joining us now is Glen's lovely wife, Glen Campbell. And Kim, it's so good to have you with us. God bless you. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
What do you feel in your heart? You go back over this retrospective to see the life of a guy you love so much.
Well, seeing those clips definitely brought back a lot of memories. It's been a beautiful journey to be married to Glen all these years. And you know, as it showed in the clip, we gave our lives to the Lord when we met and got married, and continued to grow and raise 3 kids. It's been wonderful.
You know, that final tour, Glen had Alzheimer's, and yet he performed like a champ. How did he do it? I mean, the words were just, I mean, forget his memory, the words were just in his heart.
Yeah, well, when we started the film, documenting the tour, he was in about stage 2 of Alzheimer's. So he was still pretty high functioning, but he definitely relied on the teleprompter. And as it progressed, he needed it more and more and more. He couldn't do it without the teleprompter. But music was something that just was miraculous. It flowed out of him. He never had to think about it whatsoever.
Why did he want to do that final tour? Did he know what he was doing when he agreed to do it?
Absolutely. We had already made plans to go out and do a tour. He had just finished an album called Ghost on the Canvas, which is a really, really great album. And he was excited about it. And then we got the news that he had Alzheimer's. And, you know, Glen said, I'm going to go out and do my tour. I feel fine. And, you know, our 3 kids had joined his band, and he wanted to go and have that experience with them. So we made the public announcement that he had Alzheimer's because we wanted the fans to know, in case, you know, there was any missteps on stage or any odd behavior, that, you know, he was not having a relapse with alcohol. That there was actually something else going on. And we were pretty worried, you know, is anybody going to want to come out and see somebody who has Alzheimer's? Or maybe they don't want to remember Glen, you know, not at the top of his game. But the exact opposite happened. People just came out in droves and cheered and supported him and encouraged him. And we just knew that we had done the right thing.
Well, I saw some of the TV when it was going on, and it was just amazing how he performed. Now you think, this guy hadn't got Alzheimer's. I mean, he's just amazing.
Yeah,
how
off stage, you know, he's saying, do we have a show tonight? And then 2 seconds later, do we have a show tonight? On and on. And then I would think, how is this man going to go on stage and do a show? But the minute the lights came up, and he heard the applause, it was like automatic pilot, and he just knew what to do. It was miraculous. I really think it was the Lord. I do.
What did you have to do? I mean, you know, it takes a tremendous wife or spouse to look after somebody with Alzheimer's. What did you have to go through personally?
Well, first of all, I had a team of people. It wasn't on my own. So we had our kids with us and a crew. Everybody from the security guy and the bus driver and the little boy that traveled with us, their son. We all took turns and pitched in and just tried to keep him positive. And I tried to make sure he had a nap, you know, he stayed rested. That's really important. And we all just tried to laugh and enjoy ourselves. So that he was in the right frame of mind to be able to do it.
Were you with him? He went off the wagon pretty heavy and started drinking again. Were you married at that time when he relapsed into alcohol?
Yeah, in 2003, he had a relapse and a very public, you know, arrest, mugshot, the whole thing. So I was thankful that happened because, you know, he needed that to bring him to the point where he would stop. But I think it was due to, he had been suffering depression and anxiety, and he didn't know how to deal with it. I was at home with the kids. They were all in high school, and he didn't like going out on the road and leaving the family, and he just slipped back into it. So, but the the Lord used that to,
Bring him around.
straighten him up again. And then,
Well, yeah, I said, well, he was considered, when he was, like a studio musician, he was considered one of the best guitarists that ever lived. He was really an incredibly talented musician.
yeah, absolutely.
What'd you love him for?
He was a very kind man.
Was he?
And very funny.
Uh-huh.
I mean, good looking.
Extremely.
What's not to love? I mean,
Okay.
He's a good husband and father.
Well, you had a good time together with him, didn't you?
Yeah, we always had fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was great here on the show when he was doing what he did with us, and his TV show was such fun. I mean, they had more fun. I mean, that was the nice thing about Glenn. He had fun. It was humor all the time. So,
yeah.
Well, you've been a very good wife. How are your kids doing? What do they do these days?
Well, Ashley is launching her own career.
Really?
And
singer,
yeah, with Big Machine.
Mm-hmm.
And Shannon's pursuing music, and our son, those two kids live in Nashville, and our drummer's son is producing other bands and has his own band. He lives in LA.
That's great.
Yeah.
You live in Nashville.
Yeah, we moved to Nashville.
Well, it's so great to see you, and I tell you, all of us love Glenn. I know the love goes out to you and to your children.
Well, thank you. I hope people will go see the film because we're hoping that the film, serves to remove the stigma from Alzheimer's. If people get a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, they don't need to be embarrassed about it. We just hope that people continue living their lives and let people around them know that they need help. They need support, and I'm just really proud of Glenn's courage to let the world see what Alzheimer's is like.
Is the movie released yet? Or it's
yeah, it was released October 24th, and it's just a really uplifting film, and I think a testimony to Glenn's faith, his relationship to God.
Sure.
And it's something that it's a great experience to see it in a group.
All right.
Because just, it's funny and it's uplifting and you laugh and you cry. But, and also, it'd be a great outreach tool for churches. If they want to have a screening, then go to the website and sign up to have a screening in their church or...
Marvelous.
Yeah.
Well, who produced it?
James Keach, who did the movie Walk the Line about Johnny Cash.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And his partner, Trevor Alberts, who did Groundhog Day and Bedazzled, Multiplicity. And Jane Seymour is the executive producer. So,
great.
Yeah, a great team of people. We were in really good hands, and they really love Glenn, and we're so sensitive to, protecting his dignity.
Well, I hope it's a very great success.
Yeah.
Well, it's I'll Be Me is the name of the documentary about Glen Campbell's life, and it's currently playing in select theaters nationwide. And as Kim pointed out, it would be something nice for a group to go to. You could do your church, and it would uplift you, and it would make you a nice thing to do. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
God bless you.
God bless you.
Terry, what's next?
Well, we want you to know you can share Scott Ross's interview with Glen Campbell with all your Facebook friends. It's easy to do. Just log on to facebook.com/700club. Still ahead, we've got your email. Javier asks, is it a sin to play video games? We're going to bring it on with this question and more. Pat will be answering coming up later.
And welcome back to the 700 Club for the CBN Newsbreak. Oklahoma Senator-elect James Lankford says he'll bring his biblical worldview to bear on problems like the national debt. He says the book of Nehemiah stresses the importance of retiring debt and rebuilding infrastructure. He also told Tony Perkins of the Family Research Council he'll work to protect the religious rights of all Americans at work and in every part of life. Lankford is a longtime Baptist minister, and he says Americans who are concerned about the nation's problems should pray as much as they complain. A West Virginia University freshman is now the youngest lawmaker in America. CBN News first told you about Sarah Blair back in August when she was campaigning out of her dorm room. The fiscally conservative 18-year-old was elected to the State House of Delegates Tuesday. She'll represent a small district in West Virginia's Eastern Panhandle. Blair defeated her 44-year-old Democratic opponent 63% to 30%. Blair used her age as a campaigning tool, saying the voice of young voters should be heard in the state capitol. You can see our CBN News report on her and always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website, cbnnews.com. Pat and Terry are back with more of the 700 Club right after this.
Welcome back. I want to introduce you to a policeman named Steve Curry. After Steve's divorce, his bills piled up and he struggled just to buy food. But all it took was one good idea to get him out of debt for good. Take a look.
Radio from 158.
Steve Curry has been a police officer for nearly 20 years. The job pays well, but it wasn't enough when he divorced, putting a strain on his finances.
I was left with a substantial amount of credit card debt. It was tough and it was straining.
Child support added up. He had to commute to get his kids and needed childcare when his shift landed on the weekends.
How was I going to pay for the gas for the round trip? That's a 3-hour round trip. How was I going to pay for the babysitter? How was I going to pay for food? It was a very, very difficult time in my life.
When Steve started watching the 700 Club and heard lessons on tithing and giving, he decided to try it.
I learned that donating and tithing all lined up with what the Bible had said.
A little over a year later, Steve says God gave him an idea to improve squad cars. It's dangerous when an officer leans over a prisoner to buckle him up. So Steve and his partner designed the Ready Buckle.
I have the retractor back here, which runs off the back deck out to the front here. And then when the officer wants to put somebody in a seatbelt, he just grabs it from here and clicks it down here, never entering the car.
Steve and his partner obtained a patent and started selling the seatbelts throughout the U.S. His first proceeds check was $10,000.
To watch God work is unbelievable, and the joy that you get knowing that He has given you this and watching it come from scratch, from a napkin to selling it to making money, it was total excitement. Giving to the Lord is probably the best investment you're ever going to make. He wants to show you what He can do for you. And if you tithe, that is one way that the Lord can communicate with you and say, see, I'm answering your prayer.
What a good word Steve Curry brings to us. You know, we just want to say that folks like Steve Curry are changing the world because they've joined the 700 Club, and we want to make that opportunity available to you as well. You've seen many things on the program just today of what CBN is doing worldwide. Be a part of that, won't you? It's 65 cents a day, $20 a month to join the 700 Club, and we tell you about that all the time, but what I want you to know is there are different club levels that you can join at. So can I show you that real quickly? If you're already a 700 Club member, that's a gift of $20 a month. Would you consider going up to 700 Club Gold? That's a $40 a month commitment. We have 1,000 Club level, folks who join us at $84 a month. You see there the 2,500 Club, $209 a month, and then what we call the Founders level, that's $417 a month. We even have something we call the Chairman's Circle. These are friends who give $10,000 or more a year to the work of CBN. Do something today to make a difference in the world. It's a privilege for us to be able to do that. And by the way, when you join, our way of saying thank you for caring about others and for making a difference is to send you Living Under God's Blessing. This is a teaching by both Gordon and Pat, and I think you'll really be touched by it and it will impress you. So call now, 1-800-759-0700. Just say, I'd like to join the 700 Club. Tell them what level, and we'll get this out to you right away. You ready for some email?
I'll let you know after you ask me.
Okay. Here we go. We're going to bring it on. This is Javier, Pat, who says, is it a sin to play video games today? Most of the games are violent, have sexual content, blood, and rude language. Most teenagers and kids say it's normal and fun. And some people say to leave them alone, let them grow up and explore the world. What does God's word say about people letting kids play these games? Is it a sin?
Well, there were no video games when God's word was written, but it does say, I would put my eyes on no evil thing. Mm-hmm. And the blood and gore, you know, it's just, they're horrible, and they exceed one another in how much gore and violence and profanity. You cannot immerse yourself in that kind of stuff without it changing you. And sooner or later, you get desensitized toward real human beings. And that's one of the reasons some of these kids take a gun and, it's kind of like blow that sucker away. Well, that's what they see in one of those video games. And,
well, and just general anger in the world today seems... Driving your car down the street can be a dangerous endeavor.
Apostle Paul said, whatsoever things are beauty, whatever things lovely, whatever the good report, the be any virtue, to be any praise, think on those things. And that's what you're supposed to think about. And if you absorb your mind in this other, it'll destroy you, because as a man thinketh in his heart, so he is. All right, what's next?
This is Ellie, who says, for the last 5 years, I've been managing a cocktail bar. Through hard work and dedication, I've made a name for myself, known influential customers, and mostly accumulated lots of experience. Now I want to open my own bar, but I feel that I'm letting God down by taking that kind of venture, although I really enjoy what I do. I don't know if I will really let God down, or is it just too much religious junk I've eaten over the years that's trying to rob me of my goals? So tell me, Pat, is it a sin to own and run a bar? I'm going to wait for your answer before I make another move.
All right, thanks for that letter. The Bible says, cursed is the man who puts his bottle to his neighbor. And it isn't something, there's one thing to have alcohol served in a restaurant. Beer or wine, the Bible talks about them as being something that's a gift of God. So that isn't something, and Jesus drank wine, made wine at a wedding. But in terms of it's hard liquor, you've got people who are alcoholics, you've got people who have got problems, and I know it's a convivial place for folks to get together. But you say, should you do it? If you've got the amount of skills you talk about, you could run a restaurant, you could run a hotel, you have the skill to do all kinds of things. You don't have to just run a bar. I might add, however, when I was running for president, I won the caucuses in Nevada, and I won Vegas. And so my delegate included a cocktail waitress and a pit boss of the gambling. And I was delighted to have them. So the last thing I did was condemn them for their lifestyle. But nevertheless, I just think you're asking for advice. You have so much talent and the ability you have to get along with people. You could easily run a very high-scale restaurant and be the manager of it, the hostess. As I say, you could run a hotel. It's all the same. Hospitality it's all part of hospitality. But to narrow it down just to a place that serves liquor, I think that would be a mistake. All right.
This is Dolores, who says, I've been tithing for over 25 years. Praise God for this. I've been retired since 2008 and continue to tithe. My question is, do I tithe on my gross income or my net? I've always tithed on the gross, but have struggled financially since retirement and fixed income. My gross income is $8,800. My net income is $6,600, and I've been tithing $880 since 2008. The Lord knows I do it willingly and faithfully and trust and depend on Him. It's just every month we're short, and I have cut wherever I can. Please advise.
Listen, God isn't a Philadelphia lawyer and an accountant with a green eye shade trying to figure out percentages. I think that He's not going to ask you to give what you don't have and to deny yourself all the time. He loves a cheerful giver. And I think you talk about the net, most people, for example, if a grocery store tithed out of its gross, it would go bankrupt because they can only net sometimes 3 or 4%. So if you gave 10% of the gross, the business would be going broke. Mm-hmm. So but you ask God, and then also ask God, you have been so faithful. I just feel God has a great blessing for you. And you ought to look for a blessing. There are ways of making money that God would show you. And I believe you've been faithful, but you're giving this seed, and you say, now I want it to grow. I want it to prosper. Look for some way that the Lord is going to supply funds to you that you didn't have before. All right.
This is a viewer who says, there seems to be a growing number of believers who are not Jewish but teach that we are still under the Mosaic law. They say Jesus came to teach us how to follow the law. The scripture says that the handwritten ordinances were nailed to the cross. Why do you think there's been an increase in this teaching?
Well, it's a false teaching. I think people want to be religious. We all want to be religious. We want to do what pleases God. And it's something about human beings that think, well, if I can afflict myself, if I could have burdensome regulations on myself, I'll please God. God is interested in faith. He's interested in grace, unmerited favor. But the Bible says he nailed these ordinances to his cross. It means they're over. And he pronounced all foods clean, so we're not under the dietary laws. And there is a law that he said is the law of love. And he said, I'm giving you these commandments, that you love the Lord your God with all your heart, and that you'd love your neighbor as yourself. And all these hang all the law and the prophets. So he's telling us that he wants us to love. He wants us to love him and love our fellow man, and to do to others as we'd have them do to us. They're the laws that work. I wish you'd read my book, The Secret Kingdom, because it lays out the real understanding of the eternal law that God has for us. And I think you'll understand. I also had one on the Ten Commandments that I think would be important. But, you know, God just doesn't want us under some kind of legalistic formula. But people love to enslave others. And, you know, religious people like to do that because it makes them feel big. Well, we leave you with today's Power Minute from Proverbs. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans. What a great word. Hey, tomorrow, I believe, we've got presidential hopeful Rand Paul with us. You'll find out his take on what the Congress should do. May be interested, and Eric Metaxas will be here. So we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.